This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. 5 presidential candidates in Senegal will do battle for the top job this Sunday. We'll look at the contenders and the issues the winner will need to tackle.
And I'm Peter Okwoche, live in Abuja, where I'll bring you the latest on what is once again the eve of the presidential elections in Nigeria.
Also in the program, elephant culling in Botswana. As the population grows, the government panel recommends hunting is allowed to resume. And we meet the British Ghanaian artist who's dedicated his work to Africans who served in the First World War.
This is part of the process of changing minds, changing hearts, changing curriculum.
And in sport, Chelsea given a transfer ban for breaching rules about signing youth players, including an African star. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. One of the most stable countries in West Africa, Senegal, is holding presidential elections on Sunday. The incumbent, Macky Sall, could win a second term, but his critics say he has eased the race by preventing his 2 strongest opponents from standing. Now, they are the former mayor of Dakar, Khalifa Sall, and Karim Wade, that's the son of the previous president. So now, in total, there are 5 presidential candidates running for the top job. Ousmane Sonko is the youngest candidate at 44. He wants to put an end to corruption and give less power to the president. Now, one of the most experienced candidates is Madické Niang, who has served as a government minister several times. Issa Sarr is the least known candidate and the most religious. It's important to note that 95% of Senegalese are Muslim. Former Prime Minister Idriss Seck is running for the 3rd time and hopes to attract the vote of the 2 candidates excluded from this presidential election. And there is the incumbent, of course, Macky Sall, who's been in power for 7 years and wants to continue with his big Senegal emergence plan. The BBC's Louise Dewast has been following the pre-election coverage in Senegal and sent this report.
President Macky Sall wants a second term, and his supporters are out in numbers.
We support him because he has done well during his first term and to allow him to continue implementing his work. We really want him to have a second term.
I will vote for the first time, and my vote will go for President Macky Sall.
The average age in the country is 19, so how young people vote could have significant impact. Many say they are upset that 2 opposition candidates, including the former mayor of Dakar, were barred from running due to corruption convictions. Oumar Touré, also known as Tiat, is a well-known activist and rapper in Senegal.
Le jeu est biaisé, les jeux sont faits.
The race is already fixed. The process is fraudulent because there are candidates who have been put in prison and for political reasons that aren't in the interest of the Senegalese people. It means that our justice system has been manipulated for a long time now.
Ça a été instrumentalisé depuis le début.
The government denies those charges, but after the electoral law was revised, only 4 candidates have been deemed eligible to challenge the incumbent. The country is developing fast. President Sall completed a number of projects his predecessors dreamed of: highways, a brand new airport, even a trans-border bridge. But when nearly half the population live below the poverty line, many struggle to see how those improvements help them in their daily lives. Outside the capital, most people rely on farming, and in smaller cities and towns like here, a 3-hour drive from Dakar, jobs are scarce. Young people work as motor taxis, access to healthcare, education remains limited.
It's better to create industry and jobs rather than building tall motorways and so on. That's politics. There's no work here in Senegal. We live in very different conditions here.
President Sall has a shot at winning, but there are growing frustrations that development is not happening fast enough And so when it comes to voting day, nothing can be ruled out.
Well, joining us from Dakar is economist and political commentator Adama Gaye. Thanks for taking time to talk to us and Focus on Africa. Now, President Macky Sall has launched this ambitious emerging Senegal plan. What is the likelihood that this will encourage people to vote for him?
Look, I think this plan is something that is a blueprint that you can see across many African countries, from Senegal to Cote d'Ivoire, Gabon and other. You don't know from whatever officine it has come out from. And people have not seen literally the benefit of it. Some of the projects like the highway, the toll road, the airport have been excessively over cost, and I think there is corruption around those projects. So seriously, the bottom line of this country is that there are a lot of shortcomings. How addressing, for instance, the social infrastructure, justice, equity, fighting corruption, ensuring that the democratic process in this country is maintained. I think we have a serious problem. And
Adama, let me jump in here because you've made quite a serious claim there. We don't have the government to defend itself. You've mentioned the issue of corruption. But I wonder, though, how important projects like this, because all across the continent, we are seeing governments coming up with issues, infrastructure, which they say will benefit the people.
They don't benefit the people. This is corruption, and this is the way of this government operating.
All right,
I'm
afraid, Adama, I have to stop you there. Let's move on a little bit and talk about the elections. Who is the strongest challenger? Because people are saying they're still yet to find out who can strong enough really be to push this to a runoff, so to speak.
Of course, look, Senegalese people are unhappy. If the elections are organized properly, Mr. Macky Sall will not win clearly for a first round. There might be even the possibility for him to be eliminated from the first round of ballot. I think the international press have not been fair in assessing the mood in the country. I think what is happening here is that there are strong candidates, whether you call Mr. Ousmane Sonko, Idrissa Seck, or Issa Sall, all can defeat Mr. Macky Sall. Don't forget that Mr. Macky Sall has been the person who throw away our natural resources to BP and other foreign companies, and that's something that people have a lot of grudge. Unemployment is rising. You have a lot of young people who cannot find a work, and the democratic process seems to be rigged. This is very clear, and we have to assess it. The world needs to know what's happening here, not what people are telling you is happening here.
Adama, you have very strong opinions there. You've accused the government of corruption. We still have to get the government on board to respond to your allegations, but of course we'll be watching this election quite keenly. Thank you for your thoughts on Senegal's upcoming elections. Let's move to Nigeria now, because there's an election there too. The people go to the polls on Saturday, and again, all eyes are on the country's Independent National Electoral Commission after it postponed the poll just hours before voting was due to begin last Saturday. Well, the President, Muhammadu Buhari, has vowed that Nigerians will be able to vote in a secure environment. Well, let's go to Abuja now and speak to my colleague Peter Okoche, who's been covering this election period for us. Peter, what is the election official? There you are. What's the Electoral Commission saying? Are they ready?
Well, Sophie, that's what we've been told this evening. The Chief Electoral Commissioner for Nigeria, he's chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, at a press conference this afternoon, assured Nigerians that everything is now in place for these elections to take place. I mean, he gave a rundown of what has been moved where. Also, the Inspector General of Police, he's the top police officer in the country. He was at the press conference as well and assured Nigerians that security had been well taken care of. There'll be 3 policemen at each polling station all across this country. That's over 100,000 of them, and he said they'll be very well policed, and assured Nigerians that they could go around and vote knowing that they would be safe and they wouldn't be harassed by anyone. So yes, it seems as if INEC has got its act together now, and the elections will go ahead this Saturday.
Why was it postponed in the first place, Peter?
Well, the reason that was given was logistics. They didn't get their logistics right. They were not able to get voting materials to all the nook and crannies of this vast country. They said some of the material had arrived in country just a few hours before the voting was meant to start. So there was no way they were going to distribute these materials, the result sheets, all of them. And they had thought about just postponing it for a few days. But then the card reader, the machine that proves that you are actually registered to vote, takes 5 days to reconfigure. And once they realized that it would take that long to reconfigure all the machines, they now pushed it forward by a week. But now they've assured Nigerians that they're ready.
Okay, so then how about Nigerians themselves? Are people really looking forward to this vote? Because there was quite some disappointment when it was postponed.
Absolutely, you're right, and rightly so, because a lot of people had made different plans. A lot of people had traveled to different parts of the country. Some people like to do their politics, participate in politics from the grassroots, from their hometowns. So yes, they were disappointed. What I see right now is not exactly apathy. It's people wondering whether these elections can be cancelled as well. Don't forget the last time they were cancelled, just 5 hours to the beginning of voting. So people are still a bit apprehensive. Would this go ahead? Would they be cancelled at the last minute as well? And then there are those who traveled last weekend and have come back to the cities and can't afford to go back anymore. And I guess it means they will be disenfranchised.
All right, we will find out then. Peter Okwoche for us there in Abuja. Thank you. Well, let's now take a quick look at other stories making the headlines. A highly anticipated ruling on whether to decriminalize gay sex in Kenya has been deferred until May. The High Court was due to decide whether to repeal a colonial-era law that makes homosexual acts punishable by up to 14 years in prison. Activists waiting for the verdict said they are heartbroken by the delay. Gunmen in northern Mozambique have attacked a convoy of vehicles belonging to an American oil and gas company, killing one worker. More than a dozen unidentified gunmen ambushed the convoy in Cabo Delgado province. There have been protests in Algeria against President Abdelaziz Bouteflika's plans to seek a fifth term in office. The 81-year-old has been seen in public only a handful of times since reportedly suffering a stroke in 2013. Police are said to have used tear gas to break up the protest. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come in sport, as Caster Semenya's court hearing draws to a close, she receives backing from a South African rugby star. I'm Sophie Ikenye and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program: the people of Senegal go to the polls on Sunday to choose who they want for president. 5 candidates are in the running. And in Nigeria, the delayed election is due to take place on Saturday. Now, a government panel in Botswana has recommended lifting a 4-year-old ban on elephant hunting. It would allow regular but limited culling and the canning of meat for pet food. Botswana is home to thousands of the animals, which are a big draw for tourists from around the world. The BBC's Alistair Lithed reports.
Botswana has more elephants than anywhere else, 130,000 of them, a third of the elephants left in Africa. But some think it has too many. This is the destruction they can cause when they come into conflict with rural communities.
Elephants are just moving here around the homes, just breaking our plowing fields, killing our cattle, just breaking all the trees.
2 people have been killed in the village in 5 years since the big game hunting ban came into force.
Since the government stopped hunting, so the elephant became more and more and more. I think government can introduce hunting of the elephants again, killing them so that maybe they will be reduced.
And that's exactly what they're planning to do. The cabinet delivered a report proposing to lift the hunting ban and to allow the culling of elephants.
Regular but limited elephant culling be introduced, and establishment of elephant meat canning, including production of pet food and processing into other byproducts.
High-end tourists provide Botswana's second largest foreign income after diamond mining. This lodge charges up to $7,000 a night per couple. Some conservationists believe hunting would drive many away.
As soon as we stopped the hunting, brand Botswana grew around the world, and Botswana became the most sought-after tourism destination in Africa. The tourism arrivals, the revenues paid, they all shot through the roof. My worry is that it's going to knock the big picture, and it'll have a negative impact on jobs, occupancies, government revenues, etc., etc.
Many areas aren't suitable for photographic safaris and haven't been used in 5 years. Well-regulated hunting can be used as a conservation tool, and it's an election year here. Many rural voters want the conflict with elephants to end. You can see this has been very recently repaired. That fence over there, that was destroyed by elephants. Their issue is big, but so is the tourism money that comes with having so many elephants. Botswana now has to decide if culling and hunting is better or worse for the country's wildlife conservation. Alistair Leithhead, BBC News, in Botswana's Okavango Delta.
You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport, Mimi.
Thank you very much, Sophie. We start with football. Chelsea will appeal after being banned from signing any players in the next 2 transfer windows. They've been accused of breaching FIFA rules in relation to youth players. It follows an investigation into how Chelsea register and contract under 18 players. The English Premier League club has also been fined nearly $600,000. The English FA have also been fined over $500,000. They've been told to reorganize how they see transfers of minors. BBC Sports News correspondent David Ornstein says some of the regulations breached involve an African star.
We don't know the exact rules that Chelsea have breached, but there have been reports over the last 3 years, the length of this investigation, that in the case of one player, the Burkina Faso international Bertrand Traoré, the former Chelsea striker, that Chelsea paid the mother of this player in a way that contravened the FIFA rules. And so in this particular case, Chelsea have breached, I think it's 29 rules. In the statement that Chelsea released intending to appeal against this decision, they pointed out that FIFA investigated 92 cases, and of those 92 cases, they cleared Chelsea in the case of 63 of them.
To athletics, today is the last scheduled day of the hearing of 2-time Olympic gold medalist Caster Semenya's hearing at the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Switzerland. Semenya is challenging against the IAAF's proposed regulation restricting testosterone levels in female runners. South Africa's sports minister has accused the athletics world governing body of seeking to violate women's bodies. It comes as she traveled to Switzerland to give her backing to Caster Semenya.
It is not just affecting the participation by women in sport. We're looking it beyond from the angle of the women's rights, where we're talking violation of women's bodies, where women have to explain themselves for how they appear in the eyes of individual human beings.
And still staying with that story, Semenya has received lots of support back home, one of them being former South African rugby star Brian Habana.
I think the way she's conducted herself throughout what is a very sensitive topic, is she being targeted or marginalized, is something we as South Africans believe is potentially true. If the IAAF wanted to really do what they want to do, then they should do it across the board. To only target specific middle distances is a very interesting one. I think we support Caster in her fight for equality.
And finally, in cricket, 18 wickets fell on day 2 of the second test in Port Elizabeth. That's the most at the ground since 1914. First, Sri Lanka collapsed to 154 in their first innings, and then they skittled South Africa out for just 128 in the host's second visit to the crease. Sri Lanka chasing a target of 197 to win the match, with 60 for 2 at stomps. The tourists need another 137 runs to complete the victory and seal a 2-0 series win. And that's all the sport. Back to you, Sophie.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you for the sport. Now, nearly 2 million Africans took part in the First World War. Many of them were used as manual laborers helping the war effort, but their contribution is rarely mentioned in the history books. Ghanaian artist John Akomfra has dedicated his work to their memory. Renee Bisohong went to meet him.
Loading ammunition, digging trenches, carrying supplies. Nearly 2 million Africans served in the First World War. Most of them were laborers. These were really important jobs. So why do we know so little about the soldiers that did them?
Since these were colonized peoples, the assumption was that they didn't really matter. No one thought that it was important to include them.
John Akomfre is an artist who wants to change that and make sure they are not forgotten.
I needed to show that this was all not in vain. This is a plea from the dead to say, we have been waiting for this moment when we would meet our future, your present. And now that we have met, let's make it a fruitful encounter.
John has created artwork, including video installations, that celebrates their contribution. It is on show where he lives in London.
So for me, this is part of the process of changing minds, changing hearts, changing curriculum. The way in which the Great War is taught in schools does not stress, in my view, enough of the role that other subjects played. These are considerable numbers of people involved in this Great War, and they should be acknowledged. It's just a simple thing for me of getting the historical record right.
That report is from the BBC Africa Children's Programming. You can search for it on BBC What's New on YouTube. Well, the Tanzanian juggler who was brought to the world's attention by the US President Donald Trump is in the news again. Pictures of Hadara Mjenja went viral after the president's tweet highlighting her skills a few days ago. The 29-year-old is in Malawi until March, where she's earning a living through street performance, charging up to $5 for a 2-minute show. Now she's appealing for more help from President Trump.
I am glad that President Trump knows my name. However, I would like to ask him to support me to develop this into a serious business. I am able to fend for my family because of this. I have 2 children back home, and I am able to look after them on my own thanks to this. That is why I need support.
All right, so let's now take a quick look at our top story today on Focus on Africa. One of the most stable countries in West Africa, Senegal, is holding presidential elections on Sunday. Now, the incumbent, Macky Sall, could win a second term, but his critics say he has eased the race by preventing his 2 strongest opponents from standing. A total of 5 candidates are running for the top job. And just to remind you that coming up on BBC World News at 18:30 GMT, and which repeats over the next week, in Business Africa, Nancy Kachungira will be looking at the challenges of keeping our cities moving and the technology that's changing how we get from A to B. And don't forget, you can get in touch with me on Twitter. I'm Ansi Kenya. That's all from the program. From me and the rest of the team, thanks for your company.